Alright, so in this video, what I have here are two smaller walnut crotch bowls. And you know, these would be fine finished on their own, but I think that they'll look really cool as a hollow form such as this. And what I'm going to do in the center of this is use some of these stabilized maple branches. So I'll cut them to so long-ish and just basically stick them in this orientation all randomly throughout this little band area. And we'll end up going down through the top of this, and there's some really nice crotch grain on this. So as we take this down, we'll see a little bit more of that crotch grain, or actually a lot more of it, because there's not really a whole lot showing right now. So if you take this down just a ½ inch, you're probably going to expose this really nice crotch grain such as this. And there's some in here, mostly on the edge. There's a couple, well, it's actually one branch that grew through this. I'm going to leave that all in place. I don't really care about that so much. We'll have to get rid of this. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking I want to do with this. I've been wanting to do this now for a while, and we don't do a lot of work in walnut as far as hollow forms are concerned. And so that's this video. First things first, I've got a sacrificial lamb mounted on the lathe. I should mention that these have been trued up already, and this actually took a bit of time to find two bowls that were the right fit, so I didn't want to bore you with that. So I mounted these on the lathe yesterday and cleaned off the anchor seal, and that's really all I've done. So what I want to do is measure the inside of this. We'll get the bowl that's on the lathe turned down so it fits inside of this, and that will give us an opportunity to stick sticks to something on the inside of this. So here I'm just using a pair of dividers to get the right size for the sacrificial lamb that's on the lathe. And I know that some people may be upset over this, but this is just a piece of birch, and birch isn't necessarily the most desirable wood. It can certainly produce nice pieces, but I've got a ton of bowls this size, and I just didn't have the right size piece of plastic to fit on the inside of it. And I was looking for something that was going to be solid and nice and flat on both sides. So that's why I decided to use this. And anyway, you could have used some plastic, but I wasn't too sure how the branches were going to stick to it. So I figured sticking with wood was the way to go with it. To be quite honest, I'm not really all that concerned about the inside dimension. It's the outside dimension that I'm worried about. So I want that to sit perfectly down inside one of those bowls, well, inside both of those bowls. And I wasn't totally sure on how high I want to make this. I know that I didn't have a lot of branches, so I had to be careful as to how high the branch and resin inlay area was going to be. So anyway, you'll see how I tackle that in a little bit. But anyway, just want to true this piece up and then be able to part it from there. I'm just using a pencil to mark it where I want to part it off at. And then once we get this parted off, we'll be able to throw this through the drum sander and get the perfect height that I'm looking for to act as a spacer between the two bowls. The spacer ended up being just a little bit too tall after I initially tried fitting it inside the two bowls. So that's what the drum sander is for. That'll knock it down to the right size. And while I was at it, I figured I should cut up some branches and get those ready. These branches are stabilized, so they should not shrink. Just doing some layout here. In a perfect world, I probably should have cut a groove with the walnut piece mounted on the lathe, had the spacer already there, and then fit the two of them so that, you know, the spacer didn't have a chance to move around. Either way, the hot melt glue worked as well. as soon as I get that, as soon as that glue hardens up. In the meantime, I guess while we're waiting for that, we should clean this up, and then we'll be able to glue that on top of this too. There, hopefully you can see that. You might hear some rain and thunder in the background. We definitely need the rain. We definitely don't need any lightning. So let's hope we don't get any of that. Here I'm just marking the very center of this piece because I plan on using the drill press. Something that I rarely use on this channel, by the way. But we're going to use the drill press here to just punch a hole down through this. And this, of course, will make this into the top. And then, of course, we'll be able to pull the garbage bags out through the top of it because I plan on using garbage bags and the rice method on the inside of this piece. Since the bags are going to be coming out through that hole, I thought it was important to take away any of the sharp edges, so that's what I'm doing there. Now in the future, if I do another one of these, and I'm sure that I will, I believe that the proper way to do this would be to cut grooves in the upper and lower bowl. That way when you sandwich the spacer in there, it all fits evenly and correctly, and you don't have to fiddle around with it like I am here. Either way, we got the job done here, and it turns out being a beautiful piece, but it would have been easier with a couple of grooves cut in the bowls. All right, so this is going to be the sucky part of the job. So I'm just going to glue these on. This is probably going to take me a week to do so. So I guess that's all we're going to do this week. No, I'm kidding. I'll come back when I've got these all done. It's just going to be a while. I'm a little worried about having enough of them too. That's the other thing. Anyway, I'll space them out fairly evenly and then fill in the spaces until I get it to where I'm happy with it. Anyway, you get the idea. I'll bring it back when I'm done. All right, well, that took about an hour and a half or so, maybe even closer to 2 hours. You would think that trying to put these branches in here would be, like randomly, would be an easy thing to do, but it's not. Because your brain, or my brain anyway, wants to line everything up. So, anyway, I put them in there as random as I could, and hopefully there's no like hard straight lines other than the lines that you see up here. All right, this is going to be the cover for this, and that way we won't have any bags encroaching in on it. There, that should keep the plastic shield from moving around. All right, let's get our bags and rice inside of this and wrap it on the outside and get it ready for casting. I guess that is getting it ready for casting. So I'm going to be using 2 bags on the inside and 2 bags on the outside. I use a little bit of compressed air to kind of push the bags down inside of the form. I initially started off with the funnel here, but it was so kind of restrictive that it was actually holding progress up. So I eventually got rid of that and then just started pouring it in. I was like, oh yeah, that's a lot easier. So if you ever want to do one of these, if you've got a larger opening, then the funnel is certainly the best way to go. But with the smaller opening here, it was really kind of restricting things. So just pouring it in by hand was easier. All of these cable ties you see me put on these, I don't really put them on real tight because I plan on putting this piece into the pressure pot. That way any trapped air that's in the casting can move freely. Gonna have to use a deep bucket on this one. Now for the rice that's in the base of the bucket, I could have used something like marbles, but I find that the rice fits tighter than marbles do. And I know that some people have suggested putting marbles on the inside of these castings, and I am a firm believer in not doing that, because if you do get a leak, then it's going to be a real pain to try and extract those marbles from the inside of this casting. There, I think. Hopefully we're not going to have too much resin wastage this time. All right, well, speaking of resin or epoxy, let's get some mixed up. This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy, and I could have possibly used Art Cast, but there's a fair bit of volume here, as you'll see later on, and it probably would have thermal cracked on me, and I wasn't really going for that look this time. People ask if I have a color wheel. I do. I'm not exactly sure if I know how to use it, but I got one. So I want to use Midnight Purple, so it's quite a dark purple. And that's probably more, I don't know, red violet. It's a really deep red violet. And complementary is yellow and green. If I read that right, that just seems wrong to me. It does. Wow. What about violet? Do I put yellow with that? Oh man. I don't know. I want to put red with it, because the two of them together to me look nice. To me, that's almost a pumpkin orange. I don't know. I need to think a little bit. I got it. Gold. Gold goes with everything. So we use some pure gold and some midnight purple. I was a little slow getting there, but eventually I figured out what colors that I want to use. It's a bit of a struggle to try and show new and interesting colors on the channel, and eventually you just got to go with what you think really goes well together, and the gold was good with the purple for me. You know, it's funny, I was mixing up this gold, and I'm like, isn't gold kind of yellowy? And I looked on the color chart, like yellow. Yuck! I don't think that's gonna go, but gold is kind of yellowy. I'm not all there some days, people. All right, I don't know how much this you guys are gonna see, but I'm gonna try and pour the purple on one side and then the gold on the other, and I'm hoping with all those branches in there that it'll kind of lock in place and not mix together, but I guess we'll find out. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna I don't think this is gonna work. But hey, you never know, right? And yeah, you know, if I had to wait it the length of time like we usually do, anywhere between 16 to 24 hours, and then did the pour, the color separation would be there, but I need this to be really thin so it flows down and fills in all those branches, and I just don't know if I can do that. Well, I know I can. I know that it'd be very tough to pour, so that's why I'm going in this direction if you're curious. Level doesn't really seem to be dropping all that much. Well, I can't imagine it needing more than that, but man, she's still bubbling down. I'm going to mix up some more of the purple and I'll be right back. I thought about mixing up some more of the purple, but I think I'd sooner see this more gold than purple. The main reason why I switched to the gold is because I figured that, you know, if I added too much more purple into this, then it would have made the overall form dark, and that was really not what I was going for. All right, what I'm going to do is just loosely tie this. I think what may be happening is it's pushing up on this rice. So I'm going to load this up with the rest of the rice that I have. And then hopefully that will push down on the resin. This is where the marbles would have come in handy. It would have given more weight to the rice. In the end, it worked out fine, so wasn't needed. Yeah, I definitely think that's the issue here. I know you guys probably can't see very much. This bucket is so large. Feels pretty solid though. I don't know. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this in the pressure pot for about an hour, and then I'll open it up and check on it and see if the level has dropped off, and if it has, I'll put some more in it. Other than that, see you in 3 days. Well, it's time to see what's going on with this. I put a lot of resin in here, and I'm hoping that it just didn't go to waste. Well, that's a positive sign. I thought for sure there must have been a leak, and maybe there is a leak on the inside of this. And of course, this is what I'm referring to. So if the marbles had been on the inside of this casting and then you had a major leak, well, the inside of this, you know, all through the bottom of it would have been just a solid mass of resin and marbles. So this way, if there is a leak, then I can just turn the rice away and it's not really that big of a deal. One of the big problems I was having was the opening had closed up and I couldn't get the rice out. So got a Forstner bit out and drilled the hole, and that way I was able to finally extract the rice. It actually worked quite well. Give it a try. Well, there's still more down in there, but you know, that's not too bad actually. I think that's certainly the majority of it. I don't know if there's a leak down inside of this yet, but it's going to be interesting to see if there is, because I mean, I just seem to put a lot of resin in there, but so far I don't see any leaks. All right, let's get this cleaned up. Well, I think that we've been successful here. I really like how it flows around the branches. There are different colors. It's blended together in some areas, but in other areas like this, it hasn't. So I'm really happy about that. This should be a really cool looking piece. The only thing that I really need to do now is grind this down to the wood so I can expose the wood in order to get it mounted on the lathe, and get a center here as well. Still got some rice coming out. Might even be able to get the rest of that out once we grind this down. So I bought this Kutzall grinding wheel, I think maybe 2 years ago, and I was going through a ton of sanding discs when I was working on this stuff, and using all different varieties. And eventually I bought this thinking that it was going to be good, and sure enough, it is. So, you know, resin is very, very hard on sandpaper. So that's another reason why to switch to something like this. I can't even remember what I paid for it, but it's definitely paid me back. There is a prime example of why you get rid of the anchor seal, because the resin will not bond to it. So if you're working on a casting and you've got any of the anchor seal left over, the resin won't bond to it. So once we find center on the bottom, we'll be able to flip this over and put a waste block on the top, because the opening is just a little bit too rough to mount between centers using a cone or anything like that. All right, so now I've got this ground down, I think that it's probably best to just put a block on the top of this. We'll glue this on, and that way we've got something for the live center to push on. And that way I'll be able to line it up the way I want to. I know that this is fairly even on the outside, so as long as this is running true-ish on the outside, then once that's done, we can get a glue block on this, or maybe since there's already a tenon here, maybe I'll just expose that and that's what we'll grab it with. And then we'll be able to clean this out and then support it with a cone center. But I can't do that because it's all got epoxy all the way around it. As you can see, we're now mounted between centers. Now, my initial thought on this piece was I would be able to whittle down that little waste block that's on the top where the opening is, and then get rid of any excess epoxy, and then try and get that band running true. That was the main goal. I don't know where the footage went of me fooling around with that, but I did take some time to try and get this running the way that I think that it wanted to run true. But I believe that when the two halves came together, that was off just slightly, and I didn't get it perfectly mounted when I repositioned the casting on the live center, on the tailstock end. It's not an easy thing to do. If there was a way of doing these castings where you're just pouring in the band area, maybe the ideal way to do this is to take and do a pour, essentially like a band, and then sandwich that between the two castings. That may be a way around it, but one of those castings did have that void in it, so then you have to deal with that as well. As soon as things are mounted in the chuck, it's certainly a lot more secure, so that's one of your goals you should be doing too for a lot of the new turners. Mounted between centers, as long as you've got good pressure, things should not go bad, but things certainly can. And things can go bad when they're mounted in a chuck as well. But when things are mounted in the chuck, they typically, it's a lot safer to turn. I should mention that pretty much from here on, we're just going to be using the Hercules. I think I used the 5/8 bowl gouge on the very bottom of this casting afterwards, and maybe to whittle down the top piece as well. But other than that, it's the Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems. And again, just like Designer Epoxy, Starbond, and sandpaper.ca, all your discount codes are in the description down below. So head on down there and check them out if you need some stuff, and put some money back in your pocket. If you look at the waste block, it's not running true anymore. And that kind of shows you how much I've moved this piece. And I certainly could have tried to move it again and try and line it up again. But the problem is I was a little worried about how, well, first of all, going through the side of this thing once we start hollowing it out. That's one of the big concerns for me at this point. And, along with that, I wanted to be able to true this piece up 100% on the inside too, because I want this piece to actually be lit. If somebody wants to, they can put a light inside of this and it actually glows quite nicely. But if you hadn't done that, then you probably would have had something like, it would have been, the epoxy would have been thicker on one side and thinner on the other, and then it just, to me, it wouldn't have looked right. So as per normal, I didn't have a clear-cut plan for the way that this is going to look on the top side. So, you know, I just wanted to clean it off, and then from there, I'll figure out exactly if I'm going to do an integral collar. I would have been really cool if I had poured maybe another stick type collar and then glued it on the top of this piece. You know, there's lots of possibilities, but in the end, I do end up turning an integral collar, and I think that it's probably the right call because it all matches, and you've got all that figurative grain up there too. I forgot I did use a gouge on the upper end of this. A freshly sharpened gouge, by the way. If you're really having issues cutting this Scotch grain or burl grain before your last pass, head back to the grinder and sharpen it. And there you go. It's a very clean cut surface, and that's exactly what you want. Beautiful. We are all set up and ready for hollowing. Hopefully this won't take too long. This crotch grain on the very top of this bowl is pretty nice. This is the one-way captive system, hollowing system. And right now the laser is set for about, I don't know, ½ inch or so. We're gonna have to kind of play this by ear because I don't really know what kind of thickness I've got on the inside of this until I can open it up and see what we're looking at. All right, let's get her done. So those who watch my videos regularly, they know that I've been having some issues with my laser that goes with this unit. So I've pretty much abandoned it. I did set it up initially, but the larger wheels on the steady rest are now interfering with it. So I need to make a taller mount to go over top of the steady rest. That was suggested by a viewer, and you know, it never even really dawned on me. The piece that I've got my right hand on, I'm going to extend that and mount a laser on that. So that was a great suggestion. Thank you so much for that. And I did buy a laser from Amazon, and it is one that you can mount on a rifle or a pistol. And of course, these lasers are designed for shock because there's no shortage of that when it comes to rifles and pistols. So it should last a lot longer than these little pen lasers. And along with that, I bought the rail that it mounts to. So hopefully I'll be able to create a mount easily enough, and it's not going to be too taxing to figure that all out. That there is a new tool rest that I bought. The only problem with it is I can't use my large boring bar with it because the boring bar sits too high. These thinner curved bars that come with this system are fine, but the opening really can't be much smaller than what you see there. So it's good and it's bad, but as long as your opening is as big as this or larger, then it'll work perfect. It actually gives a lot more support than just doing the normal tool rest that's in some cases probably 2 inches away from the top of the form. And the other thing about the laser, I'll mention this, it's actually rechargeable. And so these lasers that come with this system, I find they really eat up batteries, like really bad. So the fact that now I've got a rechargeable integral battery in the new laser, hopefully that won't give us too much trouble, and hopefully I can get this mount made up fairly soon. and we'll be able to look at my handiwork as far as welding is concerned and fabricating. I did actually use all 3 bars that come with the system here. I cut a ton of footage out of here, trust me. The wall thickness on this ends up around 1/4 of an inch, and the birch spacer that was inside, I think that it ate up a lot of resin. Birch is actually quite porous and soft, so that might explain where a lot of the resin went to, because you could see through it when you hold a strong light on the outside of the form. You could almost see through it. So that's where I think a lot of the resin went to. Anyway, still got some improvements to make. Eventually it'll be a fantastic thing and won't give me any issues at all. Hopefully. Finally on to sanding. This little drill extension. And of course these are the 3.5-inch stipple discs, and they're wrapped around. I think I ground that down to about 1.5 inches in size. And it was sanded from 60 to 180, or no, 60 to 220 on the inside. All right, what I've got here is 6 ounces of the Pro Series. There's the bottle. And anyway, we're just going to do resin finish on the inside of this. Dump it all in. It's nice and thin, 2 to 1. It's really great for this type of work. I'm actually really happy with the inside of this. It's probably one of the best ones I've done, actually. All right, I'll leave that for about 10 minutes, and then I'll flip it over and put it in the clean room. We'll see you tomorrow. Having some issues getting up underneath of that collar. There wasn't really a whole lot of room, so that's the Scoochy gouge that you can get from Lee Valley. And I'll remind you that pretty much all of the things that you'll see here in this video, there are either Amazon links or other links to Lee Valley and other places that you can find the products that I use each week, besides the sponsors, of course. And there you go. The surface is cut cleanly, ready for sanding. No tear out. Tear out is your enemy. You need to really stay at it until you can get rid of that tear out, or else you're just going to be using a ton of sandpaper to try and cut it back. Here I'm using the smaller Hercules. I like this for taking some finishing cuts. Actually, it's got a fresh new cutter on it, so it was cutting quite well. So that's why I used it. And then pretty soon we'll be able to move on to sanding. It's taken a bit of time to get here. I really like the concept of this piece, and hopefully we'll see more of these in the future. And, we'll make them a different way that we can get this thing running true on the lathe. That's my main focus when we do another piece like this in the future. Don't get me wrong, this is still a beautiful form, and I absolutely love it. But I'm a little anal when it comes to things like this, and it bothers me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you, it does bother me a little bit. So the outside of this form was sanded from 60 to 800, and then of course once we're all done with the sanding, we'll be able to buff with the Triple E buffing compound, and then clean it up with a denatured alcohol and get ready for its first coat. The best part, first coat finish. All right, this is the first coat of Waterlux Gloss. Awesome that there was really no filling to do here. And You can see purple and you can see gold in there. So we got color separation. The inside, I know I didn't show it. It's a little rough texture with where the grain left some bubbles behind. But I absolutely love this piece. Beautiful crotch grain too. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for the second coat. Let me know what you think. This is mainly for the new people. Typically, I will take the triple E buffing compound and use it between coats of finish, and then the denatured alcohol, and then the next coat. All right, this is the second coat of Waterlux Gloss. And well, of course, it looks better with its second coat. Really digging this piece. Anyway, I don't think that there's going to be another coat because I don't think it needs it. Just a hollow form full of awesomeness. All right, we'll see you when we're doing the bottoms. Or bottom. This is in fact the next day, and we're mounted on the vacuum chuck, just using the 5/8 bowl gouge from David Ellsworth to whittle down the rest of this tenon. There was no resin on the bottom of this, so the gouge worked perfectly fine here. And the base was sanded from 60 to 320. I typically only go to 320 on all wood surfaces. Anything above that, you're really just polishing the grain. All right, let's have a last little chat about this beautiful little hollow form, and it'll be interesting to see what people think about it. I think it's a beauty. All right, let's have a last little look at this beautiful hollow form. I'm really digging this piece. I will show it at the end, but when it's lit from within, it's absolutely spectacular. Here's the very top, walnut crotch. Here's the bottom. And as per normal, I'm running late, so still needs probably 2 or 3 coats of finish on the very bottom. Then it'll be ready to go to its new home. This piece is for sale. So if you are interested, please let me know. Send an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com and I will disclose the price then. Trying to line up these two pieces between centers to get that resin ring perfectly centered is virtually impossible. I did it as good as I could, but I missed it a little bit. But when it's sitting there, it's not really that big of a deal because you're not really going to notice it. But when it's spinning, you'll see that it's off a little bit. What else? 8.5 inches across, 5 inches tall to the collar, and it's probably closer to 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch in thickness, some areas. I was a little worried about that birch spacer that I put on the inside of this, that if you didn't get that perfectly centered, then you might go through the side, but there was lots of room there. And anyway, it's a beautiful piece. Set this down. Don't forget to put Designer Epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the giveaway at every 5,000. And the next giveaway is going to be at 100,000 subscribers. When we get there, hopefully we get there. And along with that, if you put a comment down below, you'll also be entered into my giveaways at every 5,000 subscribers as well. Next week, we've got a maple burl project coming up. And it's a really nice bowl. So please come on back for that. It's truly a beautiful thing. But I guess that's it. Thanks for stopping by and watching the videos. I do really appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, please do that and help me get to 100,000 subscribers. And along with that, that thumbs up will never hurt as well. So please give me a thumbs up in my videos. That way YouTube will push my content to others. All right, well, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell, and we'll see you next week.